It's the Digital Babble with your host, Flipper. Colorful commentary on your photography. Seen on fingerlakes1.com.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Flipper, on the Digital Babble. It's your photography show about photography. I goofed that up, didn't I? Anyway, doesn't really matter. Here we are, the Digital Babble. This week's show is all about Aperture. And we're going to talk about what Aperture does for your camera and your lenses and your photos, as well as I got some great examples of things that I shot last night, just to give you a good example of depth of field and what Aperture actually controls. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to start right off and talk about that sort of stuff. But hey, first off, it is the Digital Babble. We are on Facebook. We are on fingerlakes1.com, on fingerlakes1.tv. Broadcast live every Saturday, every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We're on live here doing a photography show. So we're going to have theme shows from here on out, different pieces of it. This is the last element of exposure. We'll probably go over exposure again later down the road, just to kind of interject some different pieces to that. And also, we're going to probably, kind of cover different aspects. And we're really hoping to get some professional photographers for guests on to talk about different elements of it. If you want to send your questions in, or if you want to learn something specific about Photoshop, you can email me at thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. And we'll take your question and we'll come up with like a step-by-step process and make it happen right here on the show. So we can demonstrate it. We'll demonstrate it on a couple different images. If you want to send in your images, we request that you send in images, raw images, JPEG images. And what I mean by raw, I don't mean camera raw. I mean right out of the camera. So JPEGs that come right off your camera. Send them in as examples. We'll take up to 3 images every show, and we're going to Photoshop them and do different things with them to kind of teach the different techniques in Photoshop. So that's kind of a great fun time for me, because I kind of feel like, I'm painting or, fixing something up and taking something, making it a little better. It's that whole technician of me. I really do enjoy making those things happen. So one adjustment here, and I got to figure out where I'm going to fix it here, and I can't. Okay, so I think this week we got through all the technical details. The camera's not refocusing. It is a little slow for some reason. So the Digital Babble. This week it's all about Aperture. Aperture is the opening that's inside your lens on pretty much any type of lens or camera. And that's the opening. So as you're looking through and taking a picture, it's how open or closed that particular lens is. So Aperture is defined by a mathematical formula. So we'll get into the science a little bit first, and then we'll kind of get more into the creative part of it. The mathematical formula basically is the length of the lens, so the millimeter of the lens, okay, and then how open or closed it can actually get in millimeters. So it's F divided by whatever, and that's where we get our f-stops. So if we now look at, let me get I got to find the right one here, host and photos, I think. Yes, okay, so here is a great chart I kind of developed with a couple different pieces of clip art, and then I designed my own to demonstrate Aperture. And Aperture is the opening or opening width or opening diameter of your lens. So a large aperture would have a lower number, as you can see on the very left side of the chart here. So f2, f2.8, f1.8, very, very open lens. That means that the length of the lens and the opening millimeter is close to being the same. So that's where you get a low f-stop. As you stop down the lens and as you stop down the aperture, it closes the aperture blades, and thus creating a smaller opening, which gives you like an f8 or an f22. So instead of being like, saying if you have a 100 millimeter lens and the opening, the maximum opening is an f2.8, that means that it's 100 millimeters divided by 2.8. Medium aperture would be f8, so That would be 100 millimeters divided by 8. So that's where we get the F number from. And that's the key when you're beginning in photography, is to understand that when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're looking for something that's going to say F something. So F 3.5, F 5.6, F11, F16, F22. What this does is it opens up the faucet. It makes more light enter the lens and hit the imaging plane to create a faster exposure. So this is where it can kind of help with shutter or ISO, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So back to that whole triad thing, you have your ISO, shutter, and aperture. We're going to talk about aperture, and with aperture and the adjustment of aperture, we talk about stops of light. We talk about we're going to stop it up or down so many stops. And what a stop is when we talk about aperture is the doubling or halving, if I said that right, halving of light entering into the lens. So if we're looking out to another portrait, saying we're taking a portrait of me right now, and we can take this portrait at f4, okay, but it's just not a fast enough shutter speed and we really need a little bit more light. We can open the lens up by going lower number, so a lower f number, to let more light in. So maybe we realize, you know what, we really need about another stop of light because my face is very dark or something, okay, or maybe my eyes are really dark. They just look like little black holes and we really want a little more color or something. So we need a little bit more light to do that. So what we can do is stop the lens down. What would it be, up or down? I don't know. Well, we would change the lens to be a lower f-stop number to let more light in. So as you can see on this diagram, going from f4 to f2.8 is exactly one stop. And a lot of people are like, well, isn't that arbitrary? Yes, it is, because there is standard f-stop numbers, and there's an actual grid that gives you all the standard f-stop numbers. I really don't care as a photographer myself what those standard f-stop numbers. I care because my camera, or what I care about is in my camera, when I adjust my aperture or I adjust my shutter speed, it does it in third stop increments. So I know every click is a third. So I go, if I want to get another stop of light, I either go to the left or the right, you know, take the dial and left or right it by 3 clicks. So if I want more light, I go to the left, 1, 2, 3, and I get a whole stop more light. I want it to be a little darker, 1, 2, 3, and I get half the light is let in, so it's one whole stop darker. The rule of thumb here that really helps out figuring out how much light you're letting into the lens, and if you want to get more technical into the whole idea of aperture and what it does with the camera and so on and so forth, is that it's every time you double the aperture number or have the aperture number, it's actually 2 stops of light. So that's a really, really good basic rule of thumb when you're trying to wrap your head around this whole idea of the opening and closing of the lens according to how much light's coming in. So like I have here on the on screen here, to which way? That way. So right there. As you can see, as you move across or move to the right or to the left, it's closing the lens or opening the lens. Every time you double, so f4 to f8 is actually a 2 full stops. So that's a really easy way to look at your camera settings and go, oh, you know, I really need a little bit more light, but I'm not sure where I need to be. Well, I know a whole stop would be the f4 to f8 would be 2 full stops, so I need half the clicks moving in. And I know that's a hard thought process to grasp, because I should have probably brought a camera in with me. But like taking your adjustment of when you're setting your aperture, you can go, if it's set in halves, you know it's 1, 2 clicks, and that's a whole stop. And that's a great way of learning how the standard apertures show up on your camera. As the diagram also suggests, large aperture is around f2 or f2.8. A medium aperture is about f8, and a small aperture is about f22. And there's good reason for all these different pieces. Why would we want a large aperture? Okay, why would we want a medium aperture? Why would we want a small aperture? There is a lot of artistic reasons for different pieces of this. So why don't we start with some basics? Okay, what we call a I don't care aperture, a lot of photographers go by the I don't care. I said it, I forget it, I go shoot it. Is the f8 to I really did that backwards. The f8 to about f16 is the I don't care aperture range. Pretty much set it, go. It's going to give you a nice depth of field, and I'm going to introduce that phrase right now. Depth of field is controlled by the aperture. Not only does it control the amount of light, how fast you can fill the bucket of exposure for your film plane or your ISO or whatever you're shooting, it also controls how deep from front to back. Let's see, which way do I got to move? So from front to back is in perfectly sharp focus. So a smaller aperture would have a shorter depth of field. So my two fingers are now in focus. And a bigger number would be a smaller opening, which would be a deeper depth of field. A lot of times if you're talking to a landscape photographer or somebody who really needs a lot of depth of field, like landscape, architectural is another good one. Saying you're trying to take a building, you're going to want to get as much depth of field as you possibly can from front to back. You know, you really want that depth of field because you want everything to be in focus. And that's going to be a whole nother show. We're going to talk totally just solely about depth of field at some point. But I'll give you the basics. So, you know, in landscape, you want those higher F numbers or smaller openings to give you that really deep depth of field. Now, the reason for the sharpness change is the opening, the physics behind it is that you're flooding the light in. So, of course, the photons are coming through the light or through the lens. They go to a conical point and then are reprojected back onto the film plane. And what that does is with a big opening, the light scatters more, which then gives you this blurry effect, and the only thing that's tack sharp is what you focused on. The smaller the opening or the higher the f-stop, it actually gets rid of all that scattering the light part, and then it focuses the light beam to that apex and back onto the film plane, making a very sharp image. So that's really the basis of the whole idea of aperture. So to give you a couple of good examples, I think I got one here. Yep, there we go. This is my cell phone with some dust on the table and a jacket in the background and then another chair in the background. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner and the lower part of the photograph here, I literally just took a camera, set it down on the table, put these two subjects out there, and shot at f2.8 for the proper exposure and f8 at the proper exposure. And I don't know if you can see it real clear on here, but there's a huge difference in depth of field. Notice the blue. I'm going to point to the screen like I'm telling you this, and I really need to figure out a way to point on the screen here to show you, but the pointers show it really. The blue little thing that's up by the upper left-hand corner of the picture is pretty sharp in the f8 one. It's really blurry in the f2.8. Notice the foreground down by the F numbers. The foreground is totally different in each picture. The f2.8, it's fairly blurred in. You really can't see the dust particles. On the f8, you can see the dust particles, and they're so sharp that they're almost distracting to the eye. So that's the difference. And I focused right on the camera. That's where my focus point was. So let's get one more example here. And let's see, we're doing good for time. So this one's another one. I purposely made it darker so hopefully the blur would show a little better, okay? And here you can see the f2.8, the background picture right over the mouse there. Very blurry on the f2.8, not so blurry on the f8. The water bottle there, the water spray bottle there, used to correct our cats. So that's a little blurry on the f2.8, and on the f8 it's nice and tack sharp. So that's really the big difference, and those are some great examples of that. Let's see if I got one more. Nope, I do not have one more. But that's really what you can do. Now, I had a question from a friend of mine, a new friend of mine, I should say, and she asked that she really likes taking bird photos. and wildlife photos. And she's seen some of these photographers that can get this, isolation of here's the subject, but then everything in the background is just gone. There's two ways that you can accomplish that. One is shooting as far out as possible with your lens. So like saying if you got a what it would be like a 70 to 300, okay, and you got a 300 millimeter lens, and you got a fast lens, something that's like 2.8 or 3.5, even a 4, an f4 lens. That tells you the speed of the lens. That's the other thing. The f-stop tells you the speed of the lens. The lower the number, the faster the lens. Means that you can shoot in less light. It means that you can get pictures with less light. You don't need as much light to get those pictures. So, saying if you got an f2.8 lens and you can shoot at 300 millimeter, you focus on this one little thing that's maybe up in a bush or up in a tree, like maybe a little chickadee or maybe a little robin or something. Okay, and you focus on that robin. Okay, and you're set to aperture priority, so you set your aperture at f2.8 as fast as you can get it, and you are all the way out at 300 millimeter. What will happen is a conical event. It's physics. It's about photons. The photons enter the lens, and because you're not gathering as much lens with a wide-angle lens, the wider you are, the more photons it's gathering, it's taking a smaller area and gathering just those photons. And when those photons enter the lens and it's at f2.8 all the way out as far as you can reach, so you're at 300 millimeter, that background just totally goes blurry. It's just a soft kind of, maybe if there's leaves in the background, it's just soft green. Maybe there's sky in the background with some clouds, soft gray, white, and blue. And it really gives you a really neat effect. It's almost like painting. It looks like almost like somebody painted the background. The other way to do it is Photoshop. You can take, in most subjects that you can isolate like that, you can take and blur the background completely out and make it painter-like. You could even put a different background in there and make it painter-like. So that's really a neat technique, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it with one of the photos here tonight, hopefully. Maybe I got one that I can do it with. And that's really the key here is when you're out shooting, you got to experiment. You got to experiment with your f-stops. You got to experiment with your shutter speed. And you got to, you're going to experiment with your ISO at some point. I know one of my photography friends who shoots a lot of portraits, who likes to do portraits in natural light. In other words, whatever light's available. That gets kind of complex at times, but it's probably the most straightforward way to shoot. You meter off their forehead. So you take the camera pointed at their forehead and just have their forehead, figure out the meter reading, change it to manual, put those settings in, so your f-stop and your shutter speed, and then you can start playing and go, okay, I need a little more depth of field, so I need a little bit higher aperture number. So instead of f2.8, I'm going to go to f3.5. Maybe I need to make it, it's coming out blurry because you can see me shaking with the hand holding the camera. So maybe we need a faster shutter speed. So let's lower the aperture and up the shutter speed. Everything is relative to each other, and that's where I think a lot of beginning photographers or amateur photographers really miss the boat. Is once you get it in your head that everything is related in photography. In other words, the aperture is related to the shutter is related to the ISO, and everything's related to each other. It's a triad, and everything, as you move one, the other one has to move. You're going to find that your pictures are going to get so much better. There's two things that make wonderful photos. One is using decent lenses, and I'm not saying go break the bank like I did. I bought a 70 to 200 f2.8 lens with IS, and I mean it's a $2,200 lens. No, if you're not shooting professionally, you probably don't need that. You could probably go get an $800 lens that's pretty darn good for what you want to use it for. The other thing too is knowing your distance from your subject and where you get the most bang for your buck for each subject. So like the bird example, the further out you are and the farther you zoom, the softer the background's going to be. So that's something you keep in mind. You're like, wow, look at that. I got that picture over there and that happened. A lot of times, a really good tip is always, if you're not getting good pictures, you're not close enough. Well, that's very true at times. I know for a fact when I'm shooting an event, a lot of times I can't get close enough, and sometimes the light doesn't balance out the way I want it. So we're at 7:20. I'm going to get right. I'm just going to stop right there about Aperture. If you got questions, give me an email, thedigitalbabble@gmail.com, or go to our Facebook page. You can just find us, The Digital Babble. Post a comment, post a question, post some photos. If you want to send in your photos for us to use on here for the Digital Babble for the photo editing and stuff, you can send us up to 3 photos. Please make sure that they're not super huge, like, 21 megapixel would be bad. It would take forever to download them. Make them, about, 6, 10, someplace in there. 10 megs tops. Just shrink them up so that they're easy to send for you and me. Because this show is not completely high res, it is HD, but it's not completely high res. Anything more than 1,000 pixels tall or 1,200 pixels tall really ain't going to make a difference on screen. So there you go. There's my spew about that. Send us your photos, send us your comments, send us your questions, and let's get right into some of these photos because it's time to have some fun with Photoshop. So we're going to take it right into Photoshop here in just a second. All right, this is one of my favorite pet portraits. I believe my friend here up in Watertown sent me, and he's funny. He's a techie guy, and this is I believe this is his pup. Very cute pup dog. And funny story, real quick. He was going to put a helmet cam on the puppy dog to get it to chase around and do tricks and stuff, and then publicize the videos that came from it. I don't think it has happened yet, but maybe if he's listening, maybe he's going to get to it and do that. I'd love to see some of those. This photo is really nice. I like the exposure. The exposure as well. The depth of field is huge. I mean, you can see that everything from back here in the background all the way up to the front of the paws are, nice and sharp. What I don't like is I think the colors are a little muted. You can see that the color here in the puppy dog is a little shifted here, just slightly. It's kind of like a greenish color instead of being that nice tan color. I really don't think it's saturated enough. I think it's very muted. There just wasn't enough light in the room to really make colors pop. I think I'm going to try to do this whole blur the background thing too, where we can actually take the background and blur this out and get that nice soft background with Photoshop as an example. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me clear the whiteboard again. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to color correct some of this. I'm going to really try to get the colors to pop and make this nice and sharp. I love the expression on this pup's face. Don't touch me. I don't even take my picture. I'm going to take and bite your leg off. I love it. It's so cute, just growling at me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take and I'm going to blur this out and make it kind of more of an isolated portrait. And we're just going to take an outliner right here somehow. And I'm going to do it really rough because I don't have enough time to really do a great job. But I'm going to outliner here, and I'm going to take a selection and take that background, and I'm just going to kind of make it kind of disappear. So let's get to work on this. Let's get into Photoshop right now. So here's Photoshop. Welcome to my Photoshop. So you can see my brush here. It's a big circle on your screen. It's a small circle on my screen. So let's kind of get some. Let's see if we can find some white here, and we're gonna take a curves adjustment, and we're gonna see if we can find a white point or a gray point. And I'm gonna try this one here, see what it does. A little too purpley. Let's try a little bit closer over here. Too red. How about here? Neutralize. Still got a little bit of that green color in. Let's see. How about down here in the gold? But yeah, that's not good. Let's try one more here. I really like the lampshade is probably the closest thing to being neutral. So that's going to really let us color correct it. Yep, the reds needed to be boosted a little bit. You can see it here in the curves line. You can see the reds needed to be boosted a little bit to balance it out. The blues and the greens had to be lowered just a touch. So let's get back into our layers. We're going to keep that layer. That's kind of color corrected a little bit. Let's get some saturation back in here and see what we get here. So we're going to do, I think I'm just going to do Vibrance, see what it does. Vibrance is a really neat tool that allows you to just pump up the colors without actually pumping up the luminosity. So let's see what we get here. And it's very subtle. I mean, you got to really get to like, 30-40% before you see a difference. So here's a D-Vibrance. Notice it's very neutral colored. It kind of, this might actually be fun just to do. I don't know. Do I want a lot of color or do I not want to? You know what? I think I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to do a negative vibrance. I don't know where though yet. Let's see, right about, how about there? The color of the pup is still pretty good, so we'll go at negative 15% here. The color of the pup's pretty good. You know what color she is. You know, you get a nice feel for it. The colors in the background kind of blew out and away they went. So, geez, here I am changing exactly what I wanted to do with this. I don't know. Let's have some fun. I'm going to sit here and we're going to try to do a very quick selection here. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the quick selection tool and see if we can't select the area very quickly of the background. Now, what the quick selection tool will try to do is give you what it thinks is the right selection. So I did a quick pass. Notice the dog didn't get selected, but some of the different areas were not quite selected right. Like I got the couch here. I really don't want the couch in this. So we're going to use the Alt key or hold the Alt key and then click on the couch and bring that selection back. Notice it went the opposite way now. Let's kind of just give it a little bit here. And that's the nice thing about the quick select is you can add in a little bit more and a little bit more until you get it about right. So there we go. We got it about right. As you can see, the marching ants here are right about where my background is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to do a very simple and very nice under filter. We're going to do blur. Now we can do Gaussian blur. We can do lens blur. There's a lot of different blurs here that we can really have some fun with. But one of the pieces, actually, you know what I didn't do? You know what we got to do first? We're going to save this selection so we don't lose it. Now, the way to save a selection in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements is go under the channels, and down here you can, I got to remember which one it is. It's right here, the one that looks like a mask button. So it's Save Selection as a channel. So if you can see it, it's the second button in from the left. Now we'll have an alpha channel, which is now black and white, so that shows what our selection is. So we go back to RGB. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do select, deselect for right now. And we're going to go back on the top layer. And we're going to go Control, Alt, Shift, and E. What that does is does a clone stamp or a stamp of the merge layers. So your top layer now is all the adjustments, but finalized as one layer. So here on layer 1, as you can see here, this is going to be our blur layer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to select and reselect, and hopefully our, oh, look at that. The ants came right back where we wanted them. Beautiful. So what we're going to do is now we're going to take and we're going to do that blur piece. So we're going to go filter, and we're going to go blur, 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 and we're going to do Gaussian blur. As you can see right now, it's just a little bit blurry. I only have the radius set to 1 pixel. So basically, in order to blur it, is basically the math behind it is that for every pixel that adjacent to it, it's going to desaturate and shift the pixel by 1 up, 1 down, 1 left, 1 right. Now, if you start getting into bigger blurs, like maybe, I don't know, 10 pixels, you'll notice that the Gaussian blur starts making it really fantastic. You can really blur it out to where it's nothing but a painting. I don't like this effect. It's way too harsh in the sense that there is just no reality to it. You just got this big blotchy here up in the middle. You got a darker blotchy here. So, you know, pumping it way up too high is a lot of times not really the thing. You want to be subtle about your edits, and that's the key to Photoshop. So let's do 10. 10's usually a pretty good one for softening a background, so it doesn't detract from the. Come on, let's do 10. We'll type in 10. There we go, and we're gonna hit OK. So now, as you can see, we're gonna deselect. And you know, I really like this photo. I just don't think it's bright enough, and I don't think it's contrasty enough. So let's go do a. I'm going to do it manually with levels. We're going to do another adjustment layer, and we're going to do levels. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down the darks a little bit. We're going to drop up the highlights here just a touch. A little too far because my mouse is just a little bit too sensitive. And what we're going to do is pump up the midtones by moving this middle slider. The midtones basically allows you to go up or down and adjust the midtones. So we don't want to go too much. Right now I'm at 0.10. Right there's negative, there's positive. Let's yeah, 0.10 is good. All right, that looks pretty good. I like that. We're gonna make that contrasty, a little more contrasty. I know, technical term. One of Flipper's most famous technical terms. A little more contrasty, baby. So there we go. So let's take a look at the original and the before and the after. Let's go save it. Save as. And we have to make it a JPEG again and save over top the new. And yes, I want to replace it. And yes, I'm going to hit OK. And let's go back to our original. So here on screen, what you're seeing is the original. A little bit of green, not enough red, I think. The background's really detailed, really sharp, so on and so forth. A little dark. The picture's just a touch a little dark, I really think. So you can see, you know, the light was coming in this way. It was bouncing off the wall this way. And then there's another specular highlight coming over the photographer's shoulder, which was hitting the lamp here. So clear that out for right now. Let's go take a look at there's the before, everybody. Here's the after. So a little brighter, blurred out the background, so it kind of makes it more of an isolation portrait. Brings the dog out and really focuses the eye right to the dog, and that's it. Now, another technique you can use with blurring like this is that you can paint in the blur with that layer a little at a time as you come down through the photo. But that's really a neat artistic way of doing something. It's kind of very tedious, but you do different shades of gray as you're coming closer to the sharp point. So saying if the sharp point was the pup's nose here, maybe you would do the background is actually masked right out to black or white, depending on which way you're going. And then as you come in, every line you come in here, you're going to be a little bit lighter gray or a little bit darker gray until you get to this point, which would be the optimal sharpness. And then down at the bottom, you could blur out the bottom on your way out by doing different shades of gray. And that's how you can kind of get some of these really interesting total isolation things right in Photoshop. So let's take a look at the before image again. Before, notice we're a little green, some specular highlights, everything's totally sharp from front to back. What we did was we adjusted here's the new one. We adjusted the color tone. We made sure it was color balanced by selecting our color balance off the shade. And then we did some blurring of the background, and then I did a little bit of contrast and adjustment and level adjustments, made it a little brighter, made the highlights a little brighter, made the darks a little darker, really gave it a little contrasty, a little contrast to really pop the photo. So there is photo one. Photo one's down. Love that pup. That pup's a cute pup. I'm dying to see these videos. I hope he gets them out to us soon, because I mean, I think that's going to be a fun YouTube channel if he ever does it. Just to watch what call it a dog's life, and just see what a dog does all day. Maybe edit out some of the things that you don't really want people to see, but I think it would be kind of neat. So let's get on to image number 2 here, and I'm going to take a little sip of my soda, so the mic's going to go dead here for a second. I'll let you guys look at this for a second. This is a photo by my buddy Frank, and I really love this. I love this photo. It's very energetic. It's very neat. I believe if I understand this right, this is at a one of his daughters or sibling. Somebody's in here that he knows, and I think he's in the audience taking this photo. And a few of the things that I really see that need adjusting, which are very, very difficult to adjust in any way, shape, or form other than Photoshop, is the fact that, and let me start right here, we have wonderful highlights right here on the lady here. Let me get my brush just a little bit bigger. Let me find it here. Okay, let me clear it again. All right, so the spotlight is right here on the guy and the girl here. Okay, wonderfully lit from front to back. I mean, you got the background, it's nice dark, but it's very well lit. You can see all the lines and so on and so forth. But one of the problems is that there's not enough light, not enough floodlight. So you'll see here, like, this person is blocking the light for her face. So she's not able to get any type of light for this photograph. Some of the people in the back are getting specular light from wherever. Two things that I really like about this, two things I really don't like about this. The first thing I really like about this is the lighting here on the main characters, right here, is nice and bright. It really shows off their outfits. It really looks great. But the problem comes into play is that the mixed lighting in here has made this kind of wash look. It really looks like they're blue. So maybe what we can do is color balance it just a little bit, maybe just a touch, just to get some more flesh tones back into the guy's face and the girl's face. Another edit I'm going to try to do very, very quickly is what they call painting with light. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a adjustment layer and a new layer that's going to be lighter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to paint some light back into this person, a little light back into this person. Everybody that got a little too dark, maybe this person. And I'm going to do it very, very quickly. So you got to follow along because they're actually longer edits than what I have time for. But I'm going to do what I can to make it all happen and make it all seamless, all into one. So let's get started. Let's get right into Photoshop here. So there's my Photoshop screen, right? So let's get right into the picture here. So I'm going to make it as big as I can make it here and look at this. So we have wonderful. Let's zoom right in over here. We have, you know, it's not bad color, but he's blue. He is just really, really blue. So I want to see if just doing a quick adjustment layer will give us a nice, whoops, wrong one. Sorry. Back to the layers. We'll delete. If you mess up, you just drag a layer back down here to the trash can and drop it out. Deletes it immediately. Let's go back to adjustments. We'll do it from layers adjustment. And we're going to do curves. And we're going to select the dark points, which is out here. And we're going to select the highlight points, which I think is going to be right on her wrist. Right there. And I think we're going to make a mid-tone adjustment, which I got to find something in this photo that is gray. Gray, 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 gray. Neutral. I'm going to say probably his vest. That was not it. That's still not it. Oh my, this is getting bad. Look how bad this is. We'll get there. Get back to neutral here. There we go, neutral. One of the things you can do with the mid-tone contrast or the mid-tone eyedropper is if you run into trouble and you know where something black is or something pure white is, click it and it should adjust it back to the neutral colors that it thinks it should be. You can also just delete the adjustment layer and start over. I don't know, we're going to click a couple different... Oh, there we go. That looks a little bit nicer. Little too much, little too much. Let's see if we can find another spot that might be a little better here. Almost. Yeah, that's too much. That's kind of close. I like it. I like this. Now, notice the blues kind of got out of the way in the background and so on and so forth. I mean, now they're gray. That might have been what we actually were looking at. I don't know. But I'm just trying to color correct it. So I kind of like this idea. So here we are. We got this now. What we're going to do is dial in the opacity just to, you know, let that bring back some of that stuff that really was there originally. Like a little bit of the blues here. See the blue in the background. We're going to bring it up and we're going to adjust probably 50, 60. All right, 60%. That sounds good. There we go. So we got our color adjustment. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to try to do, you know, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to just do some painting with light situations. So what I want to do is I want to go Control-Alt-Shift-E, which gives me a new stamp on the layer here. So it stamps a new layer. So that's where we're at. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make that extremely lighter. We're going to bring that stuff up. So what we're going to do is adjust the... Oh, I went off screen again. I'm going to adjust the levels here. And I'm going to watch it so that I can see the people that I want to paint with light. So we're going to bring it up. Maybe bring the highlights up just a touch. That's about right. Maybe a little more contrast. There we go. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask. The initial layer mask shows everything. Now if you click on the layer mask, so you know you're highlighted there on the layer mask, and go Control-I, it'll invert it. Now you see the background layers. So now what we can do is paint with white onto this layer, and it'll paint the lighter stuff. So let's zoom in a little bit. We know we want a little bit over here. All right, we want a little bit here on her arm. And I'm not going to do this perfect, you know, so you're going to see the halos and stuff. But I want to give a little bit more light here and balance it out here. He's fine in the face, but his hands are kind of weird. Okay, there we go. We're going to take her face and bring her face back out, bring her arm, balance it out a little bit so it's not so harsh. This person's face and arm here, and we're going to do that real quick. We're going to give her a little bit lighter because, you know, she's going to not fit if I don't. Give her a little bit more light. You know, don't forget the bodies too, because the body, just because you got a face doesn't mean that the clothes isn't lit up as well. So, you know, make sure that if something's a little too dark, like right here under this girl's breast here, it was just getting a little too dark, so we lighten it up a little bit. Now, notice now you'll see the halos for my adjustments because I'm doing them very, very quickly. If you got to get rid of those halos, what you can do is then go back and paint a little bit with black and sharpen those up a little bit. So like here, I just switched, and I'm going to now paint with black on there and bring back the darkness so there's no halo. Bring back the darkness. My Star Wars buddies would be like, oh yeah, you're in the dark side, man. You're right, I am. So, you know, just adjust it a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's painting with light. Now, depending on how much of an adjustment you want to do, and I'm going to do this one very, very quickly because I think I like this one, and I'm almost out of time. I don't think I'm going to get to the third one. You know, you can do shades of gray on a mask as well, so the adjustment layer or the adjustment that happens is not as intense. So let's do this girl's face out here. Notice it's not as intense. The lighting is a little bit lighter, but it's not as intense. If I put it back to white, you know, now it's really intense. So you can do everything in shades of gray, depending on how much intensity, how little intensity. So let's save this guy right here. So File, Save As, and we go to JPEG. And we save, and we hit OK, and we hit OK. Back to our video feed, and we're going to go the original. Here's the original. So here's the original that was submitted. A little dark, a little bit, you know, uncolored balance, probably because the theater lights are always not balanced. And we're going to go to image 1, and here's the changes. We lightened everybody up. We changed the color balance a little bit. The background went, you can see here, we got blue background. We got all this different purple and red and yellows, and you know their faces are a little blue and green here. Faces are a little blue and green here. And we go over to the image 2. Now their faces are a little more yellowish here. We lightened up several people here. Lightened up this guy here. We lightened up that face. You could have done even more with this person's face here. This person right here could have been lightened up a lot more. You could have balanced it right to the light that's hitting her armpit if you wanted to. So right there you go. So one more time. There's the original. There's the after. And if you take time and you actually brush things in or use the selection tool where you can do the lines, or the pen tool to make a selection, you can get selections right down to really sharp area selections. Let's see what number photo 3 is. I love this picture. Same person submitted this. This is a wonderful picture of a small child, kind of inquisitive, looking at this this thing here. I think pretty much everything is great with this, except for a touch on the color balance. That's the only thing I think is really bad. And then I'm just going to get rid of this very quickly. This reflection in the background somehow. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm kind of looking at it. You know what? I might just crop it, because I really think that part of the storytelling of this is the kid is dead center. I mean, you're literally looking at the kid is dead center. If we wanted to do something with thirds, the rule of thirds, which we'll get into in future weeks, you know, you divide the picture into thirds like this, and that's what you're going to get. So let's go into Photoshop, and we'll do a couple quick edits for that one. So here's our kid. First thing I'm going to do is I think I'm going to, you know what? I think I'm going to make this a square photo. So I'm going to go up to the top here, and I selected my crop tool, and I'm going to go 1 inch by, or 1 pixel by 1 pixel, or 1 inch by 1 inch. And then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to just draw my box. Now it'll stay in its own proportions here. Notice when I bring it up, I have the rule of thirds already built in here. So I can tell where I am in the picture. So I think I'm going to bring it down to where I cut out that glare, and I almost got his eye right on a third. Now that's kind of neat. I like that. Let's see what this looks like. Boom. And I lost the picture. How did I lose the picture? Let's do undo. Probably because it's one pixel. How about we go 1 inch by 1 inch? Now let's try it. Back in here. We're right about here someplace. Yeah, there we go. Get rid of that glare, get that nice eyeball on there. Let's try that. Boom. There we go. That worked better. So there we go. We got a nice square picture now. Instead of having a 4x6, we got a square picture. Let's do a quick adjustment here on the levels. We're just going to bring in the specular highlights just a touch. We're going to bring in the contrast a little bit more than I think probably is going to be good. We're going to actually lighten the photo just a hair. And then what I want to do here next is I'm going to color correct it just a touch. Or actually, I'm going to use the hue and saturation. I want to try to bring some colors back out and pop them. I really love the table color down here is wonderful. And I love this sharp color up here in this thing that he's staring at. So let's let me just touch more. And then I'm going to shift the colors one way or the other. I got to figure out which way I want to go. Reds or greens. Reds, green, reds. We're going to go towards the reds just a touch. So maybe 3 clicks. So look at that. 3 clicks, totally different picture. One last thing I'm going to show you real quick, and then I'm getting off the air here, is we're going to do a quick sharpening. Now we can do sharpening through whatever, but Control-Alt-Shift-E gives me that next layer on top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through a filter called High Pass. So under Filter, Other, and High Pass. Now you'll notice it turns kind of black and whitish. And what it is everything becomes a mid-tone. So if I bring it back to 0, notice it's just all gray. As you bring the radius up in this filter, the edges start appearing as lighter and darker pixels based on whatever, based on the pixels that are there. So it kind of gives you like this if you remember the filter, find lines, find contour, that's really where it kind of is. So I'm going to bring this up to about 4, I think. 4. Yep. So there's 4. We do it. Now we're going to change the blend layer here. So where it says normal, dissolve, whatever, we're going to click on that drop down and we're going to change it to soft light. And without the sharpening, with the sharpening, a little bit different picture. Makes it a little noisy, but that's probably because it's a little low res. All right, let's save it. So File, Save As, and we save it back to JPEG, and we go back to there, New, yes, save, okay, and okay. Let's go see our original of the kid here. Color's a little dull, but not bad. I really like the picture. Let's go to the new, and we made it a square crop, and he's just looking down. He's staring down that thing. I don't know, maybe something happened with it. Great storytelling shot. Really love it. So that would be it. That's it. So that's it for this week of the Digital Babble with me, Flipper. If you want to check us out, you go check us out on fingerlakes1.tv, fingerlakes1.com. Eventually, you can check us out at tdbny.com. We're on every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. with me, Flipper. I do Photoshop. I do photos. It's all about you. Send us your photos. Send us questions. Send us show topics, whatever, comments. Tell me if I'm doing a good job or not. So, and that's it. So, that's it for the Digital Babble this week. I'll catch you on the flip side.
A Flipside Studio production. It's the Digital Babble. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on fingerlakes1.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.